There was a time, long before smartphones, streaming, and whatever the hell TikTok is, when remote controls were human. Not robotic, not voice-activated, human. And if you were born before 1985, you probably were one. Before you could just ask your smartphone or some other magically possessed device to find your favorite show, and way before binge-watching was even a thing, my house had a sacred family ritual. It happened every single night, right around 8 p.m. That was the moment my dad would sink deep into his favorite burnt orange recliner, look over at me with a knowing glance, and I would transform into the human remote control. For any of us who grew up in the 1980s, this wasn't a punishment. It was a high-stakes, technically demanding, and arguably the most important job a kid could have. If you could time travel back to my living room, say circa 1985, the first thing you'd notice is how heavy everything was. The television wasn't a sleek black rectangle hanging on a wall, it was a piece of furniture. A beast of a console TV, probably a Zenith or a Magnavox, built into a fortress of faux wood grain plastic that took up an entire corner of the room. This thing weighed more than a small car and had about as many moving parts. It was the glowing electronic heart of our home, and we were all its loyal subjects. Our little kingdom had a very limited domain. We had 4, maybe 5 channels if the weather was feeling generous. You had ABC, CBS, and NBC, the holy trinity of 80s TV, and if the sky was clear, you got PBS, which felt like the educational, slightly boring cousin you had to be nice to. There was no guide button, no menu, and no endless scroll of options. Your guide was a folded-up section of the newspaper, the ink staining your fingers as you planned your evening's viewing like a military operation. This scarcity made television a major event. You didn't just casually watch TV, you committed to it. Thursday nights were sacred. You just didn't make other plans. The entire family would gather around, Dad in his recliner, Mom on the couch, and my sister and I on the shag carpet, close enough to feel the static crackle off the screen. Evenings were a carefully negotiated truce. We'd all watch wholesome family sitcoms together, shows like Family Ties or The Cosby Show, where every problem was wrapped up in 22 minutes plus commercials. These shows were the shared language of the time. You had to watch them live, because if you missed the big episode of Growing Pains or ALF, you were completely out of the loop at school the next day. There were no spoilers, because everyone saw it at the exact same time. It was this unifying cultural experience, a collective consciousness, built on laugh tracks and very special episodes. But before any of that magic could happen, the ritual had to begin. And that ritual always started with my dad. It was never a big dramatic moment, it was just a simple, quiet phrase that carried the weight of a royal decree. After dinner, once the last dish was put away, my dad would settle into his chair with a contented He'd scan the newspaper TV guide, and then it would come. Hey, can you get it on Channel 4? Those were my activation words. It was like a superhero's alarm had gone off. In that moment, I wasn't an 8-year-old kid anymore. My homework, my toys, my entire existence just faded into the background. I was no longer just a son. I was the remote control unit, Model 1.0, my official title. I'd hop up from my spot on the floor, suddenly filled with a sense of purpose. This wasn't a chore, it was a performance. My sister would watch with a mix of pity and relief that it wasn't her turn. My mom would offer a quiet, "Thank you, honey," in advance, knowing the complex technical maneuvers that were about to go down. My first stop was the TV itself, the primary interface. This magnificent machine didn't have soft touch buttons, it had a dial. A big, chunky, satisfyingly solid dial for channels 2 through 13. Changing the channel wasn't a silent, invisible process. It was a mechanical declaration. My small hand would grip that ridged plastic knob, and with a focused I'd begin the turn. Clunk, clunk, clunk. Each number was a distinct, audible event. Going from Channel 2 to Channel 4 was a journey through the dead air of Channel 3. It was a physical, tactile experience. You could feel the guts of the television shifting, a complex system of gears and tuners responding to your command. It was loud, it was definitive, and in its own way, it was powerful. I wasn't just changing a channel, I was wrestling with the airwaves themselves, bending them to my family's will. And this was only the beginning. The real challenge was just getting started. Getting the channel was just step one. Now my job evolved from simple operator to highly specialized technician. The image rarely came in perfectly. Oh no, that would have been way too easy. Instead, the screen would be a chaotic blizzard of black and white specks. Snow. And it was my mortal enemy. Defeating it required skill, artistry, and a total lack of self-consciousness. This led to the hardest part of my job, the antenna ballet. Our antenna wasn't a discrete dish on the roof. It was a set of rabbit ears sitting on the TV like a bizarre metallic crown. Just two spindly telescopic rods that you could angle, extend, and point in a million different combinations. And my 8-year-old body was the final, crucial component in this delicate equation. "It's a little fuzzy," my mom would say. "Move the antenna," my dad would command from his throne. And so the ballet began. First, the simple moves. Gently pushing one ear down, extending one to its full length. Sometimes that was enough. Usually, it wasn't. The real art came when my own body had to become part of the reception. I'd place one hand on an antenna, and suddenly, a ghostly outline of a person would appear through the static. "Getting warmer," my dad would shout, like a game of hot and cold. That was my cue to freeze. I was part of the circuit now. I'd try leaning left. The picture would clear up for a second, then dissolve. I'd shift my weight to my right foot. The audio would pop in, crystal clear, but the picture would start to roll. This led to the most absurd poses. Standing on one leg, left arm extended, right hand barely touching the tip of one rabbit ear. Sometimes I'd have to hold a piece of aluminum foil and press it against the metal. The whole time the family would be shouting directions. "A little to the left! No, your other left! Back, back, stop! Hold it right there." And I would hold it. For minutes. Through the entire opening credits of Cheers. Through a commercial break for laundry detergent. My muscles would cramp, my leg would fall asleep, but I couldn't move. I was a human statue, a living tripod sacrificing my own comfort for the family's entertainment. If I sneezed, the signal was gone, plunging us back into digital darkness and earning a chorus of groans. But my duties didn't stop there. There was also the volume. That knob was just as imprecise as the channel dial. It basically had 5 settings: silent, barely audible, normal, way too loud, and wake the neighbors. Finding that sweet spot required the delicate touch of a safecracker. A millimeter too far, and the Miami Vice theme would blast through the house like a sonic boom. And for the really obscure channels, there was the UHF dial. UHF stood for ultra high frequency, but to me, it stood for utterly hopeless frustration. This was a separate ring, and tuning it was a nightmare. It wasn't a satisfying clunk, it was a smooth, endless turn with no stops. You'd have to rotate it with microscopic precision, watching for any sign of life, a flicker, a distorted voice, anything. Getting a clear UHF channel was the 80s equivalent of discovering a new planet, worthy of praise and maybe an extra cookie. I faced a lot of trials as the human remote, but one night stands out as my ultimate test. It was the season finale of some huge show, the kind of TV event everyone would be talking about for weeks. The tension in our living room was real. Missing this was not an option. As the show started, the signal, of course, decided to act up. The picture was cursed with a persistent, wavy line that rolled up the screen, making everyone look like they were underwater. "Fix the picture," my dad said, his voice tight with finale-induced anxiety. I sprang into action, This was the championship round. I went through my entire repertoire: the one-legged flamingo, the two-handed antenna grip, the slow-motion lean. Nothing. The wavy line was relentless. In a moment of desperation, I tried something new. I stood on the arm of the couch, extended my right leg out like a dancer, and wrapped one finger around the very tip of the left antenna. And then, perfection. The picture snapped into crystal clear focus. It was glorious. "Don't move," my dad whispered as if the TV could hear him. "Whatever you're doing, stay right there." I looked down. My leg was already trembling. My arm was at an angle that defied human anatomy. I was balanced on a floral-patterned cushion, a human gargoyle in service of primetime TV. But I held it. Through the entire first act, my muscles screamed. Then, the commercial break. A sweet 2-minute reprieve. As soon as the show came back, I snapped back into my agonizing pose. This went on for what felt like hours. The final dramatic scene began. The big reveal was about to happen. My leg was shaking uncontrollably. My arm felt like lead. A bead of sweat trickled down my forehead. And then, it happened. A tickle in my throat. I tried to swallow it, to will it away. No use. A massive, body-rattling sneeze was coming. Achoo! The sneeze sent a shockwave through my body. My leg slipped, my arm jerked, and my finger lost contact. Instantly, the perfect picture dissolved into a blizzard of static. The climax was gone, replaced by white noise. A collective groan filled the room. I had failed. At the most critical moment, my own body had betrayed me. My dad just looked at me, not with anger, but with a kind of profound, comical disappointment. It was the single greatest tragedy of my 8-year-old life. For a few more years, my job was secure. I perfected my craft and could find a clear signal for the A-team in under 30 seconds. I was at the top of my game. But then, one Christmas morning, everything changed. Under the tree was a long, rectangular box. Inside was a sleek, gray plastic device covered in soft, rubbery buttons. A wireless remote control. I held it in my hand like an artifact from the future. It had buttons for power, volume, and a full number pad. It worked with an invisible beam of light, which was basically magic. That night, my dad settled into his recliner. But instead of looking at me, he picked up the new remote. He pointed it, pressed 4, and like sorcery, the channel changed. Instantly, silently, perfectly. No clunk, no static, no antenna ballet. I just sat on the floor, watching. And I felt a weird mix of emotions. I was amazed, of course. The power to change the channel without leaving the couch was incredible. But I also felt a pang of being obsolete. My most important job, the one that gave me a crucial role in our nightly ritual, had just been outsourced to a plastic box with 2 AA batteries. I had been fired. My days of contorting my body for a clear picture were over. My expertise was now useless. I was officially retired at the age of 10. We've definitely come a long way from 3 channels and human remote controls. We have endless choices now, and we can watch anything, anywhere. But there was something special about everyone gathered around a single glowing box, all focused on the same thing. And while I wouldn't trade my smart TV for anything, a small part of me misses the satisfaction of that perfect clunk of the dial, and the pride of being the all-powerful, if slightly clumsy human remote control. It was a strange, funny, and uniquely 80s childhood job. But I know I wasn't the only one. So what was your most important childhood job? Were you the official VCR programmer, the keeper of the cassette tapes, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments. The technology is gone, but the memories are crystal clear. Those nights taught me about patience, problem solving, and the importance of holding a really uncomfortable position for the greater good. It's a great reminder that sometimes the struggle is what makes the experience worth remembering. Thanks for taking this trip down memory lane with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the good old days.